There are more waters rising. This I know. This I know. And you know it too, I'll bet. In these contentious days with all the hate-filled rhetoric, with policies that grow ever more restrictive to people with marginalized identities, with states suing the federal government suing higher education institutions, legislators leaving public office and public employees being fired by the officials who hired them, and others refusing to leave, it is easy to sense there are more waters rising. That is not to ignore the climate disasters, from earthquakes to tropical storms to wildfires, or the violence that rages in human conflicts across the globe. Nor is it meant to deny the still unfolding impacts of the pandemic shutdown and attendant isolation, the rising cost of living, student debt, school funding shortages, unemployment and underemployment, or the vast numbers of millennials and Gen Xers who feel that the American dream no longer exists. There is more water rising. This I know. How hard it is to feel like we are barely keeping our heads above water, and yet have the deep sensibility that there's probably more to come. More water rising. With perpetual reporting and endless argumentative commentary, it is reasonable to conclude that this is the most threatening time in human history. It is easy to feel beleaguered, defeated, or hopeless. It may be reasonable, but I believe that something more is being asked of us. As Blaise Pascal put it so many years ago now, the heart has its reasons, which reason knows nothing of. You see, as a faith tradition, there was always more asked of us, and it shaped who we were, who we are, and who we are becoming. My colleague, the Reverend Dr. Sarah Lindsay, wrote this: change, justice, community, love, and hope. I believe that this is who we are at our core. This is what we have to offer the world, not theological uniformity. But uniformity of vision, shared purpose, shared desire to bend the arc toward justice, to fill the world with love, to create a community of embrace that holds each and every one of us, end quote. In no small way, this is what we're talking about actually this month, who we are and who we are called to be. We are talking about our roots and how those roots also give us wings. We just sang about that in Spirit of Life. We are talking about covenant, which is the practice of staying and restoring ourselves and our relationships to our shared purpose, our shared desire. Now this year, beginning in October, we're going to take a look at a different value of our Unitarian Universalist Association each month. And as you can see from the card you received earlier, each month we will note not just the theme, but a practice. Our desire is to help make our faith more real to everyone. It is, if you will, applied theology. That is how we might try to answer questions like, how do I live my life amidst all that is? How do I react? Or perhaps better still, how do I not live out of my reactions and instead respond? How might Unitarian Universalism be a tool for living? Now let me be clear, our values, justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, integrity, generosity, all of them, each of them, is distinctly countercultural. And all of them together call us to build a culture that we haven't yet seen or experienced. But before we get into those actual values, we're looking at covenant this month because it is such an essential part of our religion. We say to those who might ask, we are a covenantal faith, not creedal. There is no statement of belief required. There is no dogma to which we must testify or memorize. That is the good part, and we say it with our chest puffed out. But if somebody asks us that next question, there could be a follow-up, even in these days. Oh, what does it mean to be part of a covenantal faith? And we might be reaching for those old wallet cards, or we might have a bookmark tucked somewhere. There might be some phrase that sticks in our head. We might say things like it's more important for us to agree on how we will be together than what we will believe together. We might remember something like that. And while it's true, we might also think that covenant is about behavior. We might call to mind, some of us who've been around here a fair while, we might be thinking about something called our covenant of respectful relationships, which talks about seeking to understand before seeking to be understood and presuming good intent and the like. But it's bigger than all of that. Covenant is actually our collective commitment to the practices of religious community. It is how we have stayed and will continue to stay together. It has always been that way. Now, our ancestors in this country were the Puritans. And while they might be horrified by that if they flash forward to now and could see us, it's true. And according to the story, most of us were taught the Puritans came to this colonized land because they wanted what? Oh, good. Very good. But that's quite misleading, really. You see, the theology espoused and centered was remarkably similar on both sides of the pond, if you will. It wasn't that our ancestors wanted to believe something different, something beyond the pale of conventional Christian practice. Rather, it was that their conscience told them that no true church could be established by declaration of the state. Right? No true religion could be established by declaration of the state, nor could it exist in obedience to any hierarchical authority, be it bishop or king. Further, they said, true coherence of the community could not be tied to assent to a creed or confession. Rather, the true church, the true we, could only be constituted by a promise to, quote, a covenant to venture together as individuals in the way of the Spirit with entire integrity. A covenant to venture together as individuals in the way of Spirit with entire integrity. Now, friends, that was radically different. You think it's different now? And man, it rocked the boat back then. And this small group of folks committed to each other and pronounced to others that this new understanding was the center of their faith, and it would be about promise and their commitment to one another, their covenant. And they named this to anyone who would listen. They were very candid about it. And let's be clear, though, they worshiped God and they loved their Bible, but they still said, nope, that can't be the center. Their beliefs were very important to them, But they still dismissed putting their beliefs into a creedal statement. They knew a creed was an insufficient foundation. Now, there was real consequence to the determination to reform their religious enterprise in this way. You see, ultimately, for putting relationship and promise at the center, they were forced to flee England for Holland. Thereafter, 100 of that congregation set sail for this land in 1620, and they landed, of course, in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. There it was that they formed the first parish in Plymouth, which is now the oldest church, the oldest Unitarian church in our association. It's a long time, friends. These are our ancestors on the Unitarian side of our family tree. And if you want to know more about that, there's a class starting Tuesday night with Reverend Jen. She'll give you a good dose. You know, if I could take you back, if I could take you on a time travel path, well, it would be really cool. We'd make a few stops. But if I could take you back to those days at First Parish, you would be struck by how far we have come from those Protestant Christian origins. Even so, despite your surprise, they are our ancestors for good and for ill. Because it is true and definitely a source of pride among us that we inherited the gift of their willingness to be different and to align themselves with their conscience. Yet, as with all of our human lineage, we also inherit the not so laudable stuff, including our ancestors' genocidal treatment of the native peoples of this land, and our collective failure to condemn slavery while economically benefiting from its existence, among other colonized practices. See, we cannot deny the troublesome parts, for they shape us too. As James Baldwin put it so brilliantly, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Knowing this history is humbling, but from it we commit to do better. We are able to say that with confidence because more than anything, we were formed and reformed by the practice of covenant, the practice of staying and returning, of questioning, what did we miss? Who did we leave out? Our ancestors held a sense of the sacred by their unshakable sense of commitment, of promise. A promise so important to them that from their earliest days they lost connections, they lost credibility, and they lost their country. That is how central and sacred they held the promise to journey together in the ways of the Spirit with the integrity of their vows to one another. While the state then and perhaps now too, stands at the ready to coerce its people into a specific religion and faith, our tradition, our ancestors, our churches have said it is care, not coercion, that holds us and enables us to live purposely and powerfully, though there may be more water rising. This we know. Beloveds, this is a powerful heritage, and it matters. It matters so much. It matters that we awaken to its gift and its rigor. It matters. Let's take a look back at our time for all ages. Do you remember? Red and yellow were living in the same tree. Why? We don't know. They just were. Maybe it was where they grew up. Maybe it was the only tree either of them could afford. Maybe it was the one proximate to work or school or a favorite park. Maybe it was on a bus line. It seems, though, that everything was going along pretty well until the night when Yellow wanted to get some sleep and Red wanted to play music. Wild thing. Then it started to go south. It's not really a surprise, is it? Not a surprise with humans being together. And if we pay attention to most of the news we get, which is, after all, at least a reflection of at least some portion of our cultural ways and mores, we might predict, if we just were to re-watch that story unfold, we might predict that either Red or Yellow would really up the ante, turn the heat up on the conflict. I mean, maybe to a small extent Red did. Red's kind of that way, let's own it. He started playing his strummy a little more loudly, a little more vigorous on the Wild Thing. Maybe in the news of today, we might expect that Red would then go ahead and get an amplifier or add drums to the mix or synthesizer or something. Maybe Red would see that as a chance to have a reunion with friends to really crank it up. Maybe Red would actually go over onto Yellow's branch, get a little closer, make sure that Yellow knew who was boss. Or maybe we might expect in these days that Yellow would find a way to get back at Red. Maybe they would start blasting music of their own. Maybe something classical to contrast with Wild Things. Or maybe Yellow would try to break Red's instrument. We sure know that sort of thing happens. Or maybe Yellow would have called the police. Or maybe one or both of them would leave. Maybe one or both would do damage to the tree. But do you remember what happened next? Neither Red nor Yellow left. And when Red got tired, just took a pause, Red suddenly noticed the quiet. And he let the quiet settle into him and played his strumming more quietly. And Yellow noticed it and appreciated it. And Red actually liked it too, and liked that Yellow liked it. And then they both had an idea, which happens sometimes when we stay. That Red could play the strummy sweetly, and Yellow could sleep. And Red could play, and Yellow can sleep. Now I know the world we live in isn't a children's book. And we don't hear the word covenant anywhere in that story. But through those characters, we witnessed covenant, which is to say the practice of staying and restoring. And in a way appropriate for a children's story, we witness Yellow and Red's willingness to, quote, venture together as individuals in the way of spirit with entire integrity. See, Yellow and Red, like our forebears, knew that they were called to tend to a larger whole that living solely to scratch our own itch doesn't accomplish. We are meant to care for each other, to care about each other. And our ancestors, against all odds, in defiance of religion and secular authority, discerned that and held fast to it despite the consequences. They said the heart of our faith, the heart of all faith, should be relationship. It should be our promises to each other. And we humans are promise-making, promise-breaking, promise-renewing creatures. That is why covenant is indeed the practice of staying and restoring. Whew. What an inheritance. What a rigorous countercultural practice. I'm so glad we have each other so that together we can next create a more whole and holy world for those who will come back and be shaped, who will come and be shaped by us. So may it be. All my relations. Shanti. Shalom. Amen.